Go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isabella Marques. I am here today with this amazing team. We are going to talk about Bitcoin as a strategic asset, states and institutions. So, over the past few years, Bitcoin has evolved to be beyond an idea of purely retail or speculative asset. Therefore, today, these guys are going to explain more and, of course, show how their projects are involved with this topic. Today we have here Horst Treibelmeier. He's a professor at Module University Vienna, and he has been researching blockchain-related topics since 2016. We have Ted Paulos. He's a founder at Orange Will. We also have Nassar Al-Ashkar. He is a Chief Strategy Officer at CoinW. And he is leading the global expansion. And we have Alexander Burke, and he is a CFO at 21 Bitcoin. To start, let's start with a bigger question. What changed in the last few years that made that made institutions and even governments start taking Bitcoin more seriously? So, Horst, if you want to start.
Test. Oh, okay, this one is working. I think we have an issue here. No, it's getting better. Okay. So it was my mic. So first of all, thank you very much for having me. And when I heard the first time the question of the panel, why do national banks, why do traditional banks, why do individuals accept Bitcoin? I thought that's a very easy question. It reminded me of George Mallory, who was a mountaineer in the beginning of the 20th century, when they asked him about, why do you want to go up on Mount Everest? I'm sure there are many people in the room who know the answer. What did George Mallory answer? Why do you climb Mount Everest? Because it's there, exactly that. We didn't coordinate before the meeting, so he knows it. Yeah, and the answer for Bitcoin would be because you can benefit from it. And that sounds a very logically straightforward question. If it wouldn't be the case that Bitcoin means so many different things to different people. For example, if you watch the Bitcoin 2026 conference in Las Vegas, you could see there was the governor of the Czech National Bank, Aleš Michel, and he was talking to the audience that they are thinking about creating a test, and they're actually doing it, integrating Bitcoin in their portfolio. So there are national banks that actually experiment with Bitcoin because it reduces volatility. At the same time, I would say most national banks hate it a lot. So it always depends on the perspective. Bitcoin means different things to different people. You can have ETFs, which makes it easy for you to invest because you do not need to care about wallets, you do not need to care about private keys, you do not need to care about fancy technology. But if you read the white paper, and we have seen it in the morning, peer-to-peer cash payment, then that's what the essence of Bitcoin is, that you basically have something that works without intermediaries. And I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that Bitcoin has changed its nature over time. Many big corporations or national bankers have an issue making a 180-degree turnaround, and now all of a sudden claiming that Bitcoin has turned from bad into good, but that's what kind of happening. And that also makes the space interesting. And I'm looking forward to hearing the other perspectives here, and I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion what Bitcoin means to different kind of institutional and private players.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Nassar Ashar. I'm coming all the way from Dubai, UAE, United Arab Emirates. And thank you for the invite. I'm very excited to be here with you today and witnessing the evolvement of the crypto space in Vienna and Austria and Europe in general. So I was lucky in 2018 to be the co-founder of the Dubai Blockchain Center, where we witnessed the evolution of this industry. And I'll be a little bit disruptive with you today, away from theories, away from only theoretical things, going to the practical side of the industry, because we witnessed a huge evolution for the past 8 years, practically in our region, due to different reasons. One of them, let's say, we have a different structure where we have one visionary leader when he decide things should move into certain direction. And this is something very positive, and it opened the space. It is risky, but opened the space for too many innovation at the same time. So fast forward from 2017-18 until we speak today, as we speak today, we witness the huge evolution of the crypto space in Dubai or UAE. Also I want to share with you guys how the government operate in our region. So they don't put the regulation at the early stage or at the beginning, which will create a certain barrier into the innovation and into the development. First of all, they try to open the space and let everybody contribute. Then slowly, they start putting the best framework into the regulation. And now, for example, we ended up having the best regulation in the space by the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority called VARA in Dubai UAE, which is regulating the whole space in the crypto. And that's why top brands and top logos, they moved to Dubai to have their headquarters there. I can name many of them. One of them, Binance, for example, they have their headquarters in Dubai. They got a huge investment supported by the government and so on and so forth. And they are opening the space and so on. Although the market is not big in terms of population, but in terms of volume and transaction, it's huge, and it's bringing billions and billions of dollars. Another example, which is right now happening, the same that happened 5 years ago, with AI in our country, where the leader announced 1 week ago that 50% of the government should be on agentic AI. And this suddenly let everybody wake up and say how I can contribute, what I can do, how I can jump in. Because this is the innovation, and this is the future, and this is how things should be. So from this use cases, I'll be here and I'm happy to talk to everybody. I see a lot of friends here. I know of them since a long time. To discuss, negotiate, to help and exchange ideas as much as we can. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Hi everybody, from my side, I'm Alex. I'm CFO of 21 Bitcoin. I'm in the Bitcoin space since 2011, and since then I'm trying to positively contribute to the space. Nowadays, with 21 Bitcoin, we are focusing on building basically the fastest growing European Bitcoin-only wealth platform. And we are Bitcoin only for a reason. In the last panel, we have heard about blockchain abundance and block space abundance. Maybe half of the equation is also most of the block space is empty because it's not needed. With risking of being thrown out here. I think it's true, and I think every blockchain. So I've seen a lot of blockchains come and go, and a lot of ideas, some of them good, some of them bad. I think with crypto, everyone goes on this enlightenment arc, and where you start off being curious, and then you end up and see, okay, maybe that wasn't that necessary, and you come back to the core roots. And I think that's also true for institutions. We have experimented a lot, and now people are waking up, and we see a lot of consolidation in space. And maybe circling back also what you said, I definitely agree that institutions adopt Bitcoin because it's creating value for them, obviously. But I think that's only true for half of the institutions, or maybe even more. At least speaking about institutions in Europe, I can definitely say, or at least what we say is that most of them adopt it because they have to. So they are not left behind, basically. For instance, if you look at traditional banks in Europe, if you ask them behind curtains, most probably they wouldn't say they would like to adopt Bitcoin, but they have to because there is demand for it, definitely from the end users. and also from their competitors, especially international competitors. At least from overseas in America. So I mean, you can blame the Trump administration for a lot of things, but at least they have put Bitcoin back on the global stage. Maybe not back, but actually they put it on stage for the first time, probably. It's the first time a major administration and nation adopts Bitcoin and proactively encourages the usage of Bitcoin and crypto. And yeah, that definitely also swaps over to Europe. So we see a lot of increased pressure from there. And yeah, so I think that's the second part of the equation. So yeah, it's not entirely freely, I would say, the adoption, but at the end, that's also a good thing, and that's market dynamics driving the adoption.
All right. My name's Ted, and I'm the founder of Orange Wheel. We advise corporations primarily on Bitcoin strategies, so thinking about it as a treasury asset, but also other ways to integrate it into their business models. To answer the question, what has changed in the last few years, I'd kind of point to three things. First of all, the one that really sticks out, well, I think we'll start with this one actually, just because others have touched on it, which is that it provides value. I think to be more specific, when you look at Sharpe ratios, so this is modern portfolio analysis, can you get an additional return without an incremental amount of risk? And by adding portions of Bitcoin to your portfolio, you can indeed get that. And there's enough data now in the history of institutions owning it for a full cycle where they can have a good counterfactual look-back analysis to convince themselves that yes, it does indeed improve your Sharpe ratios to a portfolio. So that's the numbers part of it. Then I'd say there's the access. So the ETF wrapper has been, I think, a huge door opener. Many asset managers don't want to have to worry about their custody solution. So if they can have a custody solution that's already outsourced to a third party and is trading liquid on in a structure that they already know about, i.e. stock markets, that's just a huge reduction of all those typical risks that asset managers would find challenging. And then the last one I'd say is related to what Alex said, which is, I'd kind of just phrase it a different way, which is career risk. There's mainstream asset managers, mainstream hedge fund owners out there vocally saying they're investing in Bitcoin. They see it as a gold equivalent in most cases. The more of these big names that come out and act as proponents of it, the less career risk there is for every other asset manager out there. And I do agree that at some point, it's going to be like how the brokerages are now. All mainstream brokerages need to provide Bitcoin because their clients demand it. It's going to be the same thing with asset managers, where if you're the asset manager that doesn't have Bitcoin in your portfolio, you're leaving money on the table for your beneficiaries of your fund. So I think those are the three things I'd say: the ETFs, the career risk has been reduced, and the data in the Sharpe ratio.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. I'm going to ask you now, what are the biggest challenges that you guys believe for states and institutions that want to adopt Bitcoin? Is it regulation? Is it volatility? In your opinion, what is it? And something else?
Yeah, volatility, of course, is a big issue. And when it comes to regulation, of course, it depends, because states usually can create regulation. Of course, it's harder if you are in a union. And it also depends on the size of the state and your role in a monetary system. It's no coincidence that countries such as El Salvador or also the Central African Republic, which has given it up, again, were initially interested in Bitcoin because they wanted to have an alternative to the US dollar-dominated system. Because in Africa, I think 210 million people, for example, are dependent on the CFA franc. And some see it as a matter of oppression, having this foreign currency. So for the US, it would make a lot of sense if the current world order would continue, because the dollar controls. For other countries, it's completely different. They want to have an alternative. So if it's a small country, they can create their own regulation, they can easily adopt it. But of course, we still have the volatility issue. I would say it might not be a good idea to fully move into Bitcoin as a national treasury, but like the Czech are currently trying out having a small percentage, that might be good because Bitcoin is getting increasingly decoupled from traditional assets. So that might be something that could help you control your overall risk portfolio.
Yeah, so if we're gonna look at it, different elements is gonna affect. Regulation is very important, and what we lack today is the cross-regulation part, which is, let's say every country has their own regulation. Dubai, they have the VARA. Okay, we have one standard in the MiCA across all Europe. If we look at the state, each and every state has different regulation from one state to another. So if you need to acquire certain license and regulation, you need to apply state by state. And this is a challenge as well. This is from one side. Accessibility, volatility from the other side. But however, from the other side, if we see the political tension that's happening right now, this is gonna trigger the changes and let everybody think more deeply that nobody can rely on other parties anymore. They need to create their own, let's say, protection pool from different aspects, from in terms of investment, in terms of reserve, in terms of diversification of the investments, either on the government level or on the corporate level.
Yeah, I agree what you just said. Basically, I think looking at all the wars that are going on here, I think one of the biggest failures of the West was basically weaponizing the monetary system or trying to weaponize it against certain players, and in that term or relation, basically shooting themselves in the foot. And yeah, nation states are waking up and seeing basically that what you said, that they can't rely on old structures, centralized structures, and we are seeing an adoption just because of that. And I think Bitcoin in that regard plays a huge, if not the biggest role, because after all, I think it's the only blockchain that is really decentralized in a way that it really can't be tampered with. So it's really, in my opinion, the only really uncensorable blockchain. Even Ethereum, for example, was tampered with or rolled back. So yeah, I think that role will just grow in the future. It has a proven record of over 17 years of not being tampered with, and I think that trust builds upon over the coming decade even more, and so will basically be the capital flow, I think, into Bitcoin. Yeah.
Sorry, I want to add a small remark here that who can imagine nowadays that a small strait that turn upside down the whole economy in the whole world in one day, where nobody was thinking about this, and make a huge pressure on countries because the capital start flowing in and out without mentioning from which country to another and so on. So that was a big wake up to different jurisdictions and different countries. And I'm 100% sure that when this tension will end up, and it's going to end up sooner or later because there is no tension that will stay for long, it's going to put a new measures and new access to different diversification, and we are very excited to be in this industry because this is the safe haven for different parties, countries, corporate, individual, and so on. At the end, you control your own asset by your hand, because it was proved that if somebody else, you are relying on somebody else, doesn't matter who it is, without tapping on the political aspects, doesn't help anymore. So you need to protect yourself by yourself, and this is what was happening right now. So a big wake-up call is going to happen after this tension will end. Thank you.
Great. I think they covered a lot of it already. I think I'll just maybe add in. I think I see two major things today. I fully agree with everybody on the panel saying that the fundamental properties, the uncensorability, the finiteness, all the properties of Bitcoin are ultimately what will make it, in hindsight, an obvious fact that it becomes the standard reserve asset for most institutional players over time. However, I think in the here and now, I see two major kind of roadblocks. The first one is, it was already brought up, the volatility. This is what's always brought up by central banks when they say there's too much volatility. The other one they say is liquidity. But these will get resolved over time as the adoption grows. The liquidity will grow and the volatility will come down. So it is one of these things where it's a bit of it needs to kind of bootstrap itself, and it's still in the bootstrapping process before it really ultimately becomes its end state situation where national banks will see it as the primary reserve asset. And then the other one is for asset managers. I see the major hurdle right now is just their own internal adoption processes. So it doesn't fit neatly into the boxes to be adopted. And so there is this inertia for these internal processes to be changed so that their investment mandates can actually have a spot for Bitcoin. And that again will ultimately get to a point where the asset managers that don't adopt it will be left behind and will then therefore have to adopt it to keep up with their competitors. So we're kind of in this in-between period right now, but I expect over the next 3 to 4 years that we're going to move to a point where most asset managers have some allocation to Bitcoin in their broad market portfolios.
Yeah, after all, there's the old saying, everyone will purchase Bitcoin at the price they deserve. So, and I think that will be also true for nation states in the end. So for individuals and also nation states. It's not a question of basically if, but when. And yeah, we will find out, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. And as you say, individuals, there's a lot of people investing their life funds into Bitcoin and other tokens as well. Especially, I have seen this a lot in Latin America. So yeah, it's very interesting of how it's happening. It's not a question anymore of if, it's a question of when this is going to take over. And as you guys were mentioning, my next question is, do you think Bitcoin is being seen more as a reserve asset or like digital gold, or as something that could actually be used in everyday finance?
Yeah, if Bitcoin is being used in everyday finance, it has to be some legal tender. I mean, not technically, but that would help a lot. It needs to be accepted. Of course, we would need a second layer solution. You cannot always pay on the main chain, but it's a long way to go there. Currently, it's more like a digital asset because it has proven that it can keep its value or increase in value over time. Of course, it's volatile, but I also wanted to mention that with fiat currency, with many popular fiat currencies, they're more stable, but there's only one direction they're going. They have to go down because of inflation, because otherwise states cannot manage their debt. That's the only way you see. And with Bitcoin, it's up and down. So it's a little bit like a game of risk, but yeah, it can go both ways. And I would think it would be nice if states would adopt it so we have an alternative to the current monetary system, because one thing that always confuses me is that we propagate a market economy. We say competition is good, but the one place or the one part in the system where this does not hold is the monetary system. I'm not saying that we should replace our fiat currencies with Bitcoin. I don't think that would be a wise idea. But for me, it would be interesting to see how it would work out if we would have an alternative to the current fiat system. And I think that's a debate that we should have.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be specifically the Bitcoin. Let's speak more about the technology and digital finance and digital infrastructure. So in terms of Bitcoin, for example, we were the first to implement and to try to bring, by the way, from Austria, we brought some crypto ATM machines back in time 4 or 5 years ago. And we were very excited to see that this is going to blow up the whole market there. Nobody was transacting at that time. And still, I mean, to have a mass adoption, you need to create a better infrastructure where people, they can transact more and they can have certain kind of a digital currency based on the blockchain technology and so on. Happily, that we had a very successful use cases in Dubai where this technology was used for government institution. One of them is the Dubai Land Department, where all the title deeds, as we speak today, are saved on the blockchain. And that was one of the biggest advantage 1 or 2 months ago when we had some cyber attack on this ministry, and the data was wiped out from the servers. But since they implemented the blockchain infrastructure, everything was there and everything was secure. So this is to show you that use cases are the most important things to let this industry evolve more and more within the country and from one country to another. And we are looking for something that cross-border interaction. Because think about it like this. Now each and every country, they are creating their own, let's say, CBDC, right? But we need to think about, okay, if I have my own infrastructure, what about how I can exchange it with other countries and so on? These are topics of discussions and more evolving, but people are pushing the borders and creating a new trends and new ideas, RWA one of them, for example, nowadays. And this will lead to slowly more implementation, more use cases, and wider expansion.
Yeah, so I would like to exchange fiat with Bitcoin, but to be honest, yeah, I think there are two major problems currently with Bitcoin being a day-to-day payment method. I would say, first of all, it's still too volatile, and not just against fiat currencies, but also in terms of purchasing power. And the second problem, I guess, is its transparency. I think if you want to look at a payment, or the ideal payment system shouldn't be transparent, not because you don't want to hide something, but also you don't, for instance, as a security measure. For instance, imagine you were paying for a hotel and suddenly the whole world knows where you're staying and how much you have left in your wallet. That wouldn't be too wise. So I think these are the two major problems, and I think they might be addressed in the future. So first of all, speaking about the volatility, so the theory there is basically that you taking the time, or looking forward, you first have to capitalize the asset until it stabilizes to a point where the volatility isn't hitting that hard anymore. And I think Bitcoin might get to that point, but yeah, it will take some time, I guess. And I think once we reach that point, it will stabilize in terms of absolute purchasing power. It might still be volatile against various fiat currencies, of course, but in terms of real purchasing power. And I think if we reach that point, it's just a matter of time until it gets adopted as a payment system. And yeah, we will see about the transparency. I mean, we obviously have Lightning, we have other privacy protecting technologies already, but they're still half-baked and probably not ready for a global adoption scale. But yeah, I'm very optimistic that Bitcoin will also overcome that hurdle. So yeah, again, I think it's a question of time. I think it's not ready yet. But yeah, it will get there, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to interpret the question as the rest of the panel did, which is, I guess, payments versus store of value. And I think I'm aligned with Alex in the sense that over time it will become the standard store of value. I think that's how most asset managers are, considering it as a gold equivalent. But I think it will become more of like a replacement for U.S. Treasury bonds, sovereign debt, that makes up the kind of risk-free asset in most portfolios. I'm also an advocate of the concept of Gresham's law, which is saying that good money or bad money forces out the good. So people will transact the devaluing money, fiat in this case, and hold on to the stronger money. But at a point in time when most people are saving it as their primary reserve asset, there will no longer be any need to transact between Bitcoin, the intermediate for payments, and then back into Bitcoin. So that's what is called Tier's law at that point, where it becomes the standard of exchange. And that's assuming we get over the hurdles of scalability that Hurston brought up. And also the other barrier I'd say is tax. As long as you're taxing every transaction, every payment, you're also not going to be, it's not going to make sense to use it as a payment method. Yeah.
And maybe one thing to add in regard of the fiat, I think we don't even have to exchange fiat against Bitcoin. I think at some point, if you go down the road of institutional and nations adoption, at one point, I think if you look, okay, we already have central banks adopting Bitcoin. The more and more the percentage of Bitcoin in these central bank portfolios grows, basically, I think the fiat currencies become a token of Bitcoin. So, and to some extent, that's already the point, I guess, because it already has a significant portion of the wealth in there. So, yeah, I think that we will see that too. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all for your inputs. And I also would like to ask your personal opinion for the future. Where do you believe it's going to be in like 5 years? Do you believe the volatility is going to be a bit better? The regulations are going to be better? Do you expect that people will use more Bitcoin daily? And if you see any possibility for other tokens to reach what Bitcoin is nowadays? Let's start the other way around this time. Let's start with Ted.
Thank you, because there's a lot of questions there. I'm glad I get to start. This isn't going to be a memory challenge. Okay, 5 years from now. I think the direction of travel is quite clear. We're going to continue to see greater adoption, more transparent regulations, just as we've seen in every previous cycle. Where I sort of see, when we think about, my view a little bit though is, it might not be as the Bitcoin maxis have sort of like, and I consider myself a bit of a maxi, to be honest, but where everybody is just getting actual physical Bitcoin, quote unquote, pure Bitcoin. I actually think adoption is going to happen through intermediaries, things like you have your pension fund has some allocation to Bitcoin, maybe through an ETF. So there's going to be like layers of abstraction to the exposure, but you will be the ultimate owner of some Bitcoin. Equities, Bitcoin treasury companies like MSTR, those will also be kind of indirect exposure to Bitcoin or leveraged Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin-backed credit instruments like Stretch and so forth. So I see adoption spreading much more rapidly through these vectors, more so than actual individuals getting more Bitcoin. I think every individual should have their own Bitcoin stack. I'm a big proponent of that, but I think the reality simply is that most people are too preoccupied, unwilling to learn, not understanding what Bitcoin really is. It's almost impossible to orange pill people. We can't expect to orange pill like the whole world. So I think we are going to see greater extension of adoption, but through these kind of intermediate mechanisms.
Yeah, thank you. Well, at 21 Bitcoin, we are working hardly on orange pilling the world. and also, especially the individuals, we are trying our best to make it easy, basically, for everyone to adopt Bitcoin, also on an individual level. And I think that will also play a huge role. A lot of focus currently or nowadays is on the institutional side, and that's definitely important. But I think to really garner and gather that global adoption, it is important to get back the trust also from everyone's and from the end users. And I think you have always have these waves and trends. Europe will do what it's always doing best, or what it's best at, regulating, and it will keep regulating. But let's see. I mean, you see. It's the same like with this increased uncertainty in the world. Maybe also Europe at some point has to wake up, and maybe it will realize that it can't only regulate things, but maybe also needs to innovate on that stuff, and has to catch up with enough international pressure. I think we will get there,
That just sparked, sorry, Nasser, I want to just plug in one. It sparked an idea, which is, I think, my idea of like this gradual adoption, I think that's assuming like a kind of status quo situation. But if we do go into like a World War III all-out war situation, we bomb the shit out of each other, then it could be more like a Bretton Woods type thing where it's institutionalized from the top down at the end of World War III. So maybe that's another less likely scenario, but it's a potential one at this stage. So.
This time we need to agree with your opinion. It's the opposite way. So, more adoption means more accessibility. The more accessibility you give, the more adoption will happen. And I'm saying here out of my experience, when we started in Dubai in 2018, we had zero adoption and zero institutions they were in the space. Now huge billions and billions of transactions happening, and the biggest companies are there. And this due to the regulation, due to the, let's say, people who believe in this, especially at the government space. For example, in Dubai, we had the Minister of AI in 2018. So at that time, nobody can imagine that what Minister of AI means. Now in Dubai, we have in each and every ministry Chief AI Officer, just to show you how the forward thinking is very important for each and every country and jurisdiction. So my recommendation to you guys, don't wait anyone. Nowadays, you have the best tools in hand. You have from one side the blockchain technology, from the other side AI. So don't wait for anyone to innovate. Some companies, they showed innovation and growth within 1 or 2 months into millions in the market cap. So this is my opinion. For the 5 years, nobody can predict, because now we are in a era of short prediction, and everything can change from one day to another. The most important thing is to cope with the trend, how it's going, and to be conservative and protected, and make the expansion more and more, and open borders, and open the technology, and share ideas, and directly use the use cases that had some successful use cases in one place, replicated to another. This is my recommendation for all the audience here. Thank you.
Yeah, I can make it short. So as far as volatility is concerned, Alex already mentioned it, in the long run, there has to be less volatility, especially if Bitcoin grows in value, because individual players have less opportunity to move prices up and down. As far as the general acceptance of Bitcoin, even as a payment system, it all depends on politics. And in countries where we have a democratic system, it's also a matter of the general population understanding Bitcoin, and also, making Bitcoin part of the currency, and that's a political decision. If you go outside of this room and talk to somebody on the street, chances are that they still believe Bitcoin is something for money launderers or for terrorists. So if you can educate people, if people understand what Bitcoin could mean, what kind of benefits it could have, then that might shape politics, and that might also change the way in which national states see it. But it's hard to predict, and even harder to predict in governments that have some kind of autocratic regime. So let's see what happens, and let's hope for the best.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for coming and sharing your experience and all your inputs. Please, everyone that has questions, talk to them later. They are here. They are really happy to talk. I would just want to thank Vienna Blockchain Week, Ed and all his team, to opening this space, because I think education is the only way that we can move things forward. So yeah, thank you everyone for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, panels. Another round of applause, please, for this amazing discussion. We're gonna have now a scheduled break of 20 minutes, so please use the time to enjoy some drinks, some food, some networking here in this room or outside, but please try to be back at 16:20. Yeah? So far we're doing very good in time management, but we have an exciting list of panelists and discussions coming up. Thank you.
No, eso, ahí está. Ya, ya, después.